everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is our summer replay series. Each of us have picked an episode to look back on. My choice is our series 13 Visions of the Future episode. And it's episode 1 featuring Carrie Cariello. She's actually been on twice, but this time she came on to talk about her son Jack and the challenges that they faced trying to find a college program for her son. It took them a long time. It was very daunting. He was rejected from a lot of places, and they had almost just about given up when they finally found a place for him. So she came on to talk about this. I think it's really important for people to realize how challenging the adult services and finding placements for them and finding therapies for them, programs for them. It's a whole different world than what we have for the children. But anyways, Carrie is delightful. She is a wonderful writer. She's super insightful. She brings up just a lot of great points on perspective and how we view our children on the spectrum, how other people view them, and just kind of like the things that we kind of get caught up with, which I always think is super helpful to kind of be aware of that. She's the author of What Color is Monday? Someone I'm With Has Autism, and then her newest book is Half My Sky, which she does come on at a later episode to talk about that as well.
I love this episode. I will say one of my favorite things is all these little, well, she's funny. So we talk about sister wives in here, but also there's these little bits of tips and tricks that she's learned from her own mental health journey and healing journey. And you can sort of feel all these, I don't know. It's such a good reminder episode because she's just got all these gems.
And I think she speaks as eloquently as she writes. She's very calm. Her voice is very soothing. I love listening to her. I find that reading something of hers, it's almost poetic, the way that it flows through.
Yes.
I enjoy having Carrie on a lot.
She's a great writer and speaker. I think we've had Carrie on, we've interviewed her twice, but she was on a Storytellers as well. You come at her with one question and it's perfectly answered, and then she gives extra. It's just you don't have to really work. You're just having a conversation with her, and she's so smart and just really thinks out her perspective and has really great ways of communicating what life is like for them and for her son Jack.
She does. Yeah.
If you write a book for me about my life, you probably can say it better.
I need a ghostwriter. And we had the pleasure of meeting her. We all met her in Minnesota, and then me and Rachel met her last year in North Carolina, and we got to meet her husband Joe, who he is a great guy as well, a great dad. It was pretty cool to meet him. All the old ladies were fangirling over him.
They were lined up. I've been a follower of hers for some time, and her kids each have such a different personality to one another, and they just shine so much when they come on, whether it's Jack or Charlie or a piece written about Rose. That it's just so meaningful when it's sort of about her. Anyways, I agree. I think it's a great episode. So good. She's so good.
Well, I know a little while when we talked about Kimmie picking this episode and recording the intro and stuff, we were kind of talking about how Carrie's impeccable in every way. The way she speaks, the way she dresses, how she looks. She's gorgeous, so sweet. You would almost think that you would feel weird around her or awkward, but when
very professional.
Very professional. When I met her the first time, she was so warm and friendly. She immediately complimented me. I was oh my gosh, she is the nicest person, and she's so funny. And I think that comes out on our podcast when we talk to her. But she's just really awesome, and I'm glad that we've gotten to meet her and that we've had her on a couple times.
Her writing or her humor comes out a lot in person in her speaking stuff, but you don't see it as much in her writing. So to hear her just cracking jokes, I think we were 10 seconds in and she's I need a sister wife. Anyway.
Yeah.
So we always love hearing from Carrie. So hope you guys enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Talk Like a Mother Parenting Autism Podcast. We are Jenn, Kim, Rachel, and Jaime. Take a seat at our table as we share with hope, humor, and honesty.
Can you hear me, Kimmie?
I can't hear. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
No.
How'd you fix it before? Oh, she can't hear.
Can you guys hear each other? Please.
Yes.
Can you?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't hear either one of you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Kimmie?
Lex, can you help me? Oh, never mind.
You look so beautiful. I'm singing to you. You're lucky you can't hear it. Oh, now you can, you asshole.
It was
Somehow
it was
I
on.
can tell when you could hear my screech.
That was a real technological fix because I was on mute on the keyboard. Not me, you were on mute. I'm like,
Yeah. Love you.
love you too. Thank you for taking a seat at the table. Today we have special guest Carrie Cariello. She's going to be talking about her son Jack and his introduction to adulthood and what he's doing for school now that he's 18 and graduated high school. With me, I have Rachel.
Hey, everybody.
Tabitha.
Hello.
Jaime.
Hello.
Jen.
Hi, everyone.
Carrie.
Hello.
And I'm Kim McIsaac. So, Carrie, do you want to start by just introducing yourself?
Thank you for having me. It's been a little bit of a, we had some scheduling issues on my end to get here, so I'm thrilled to be part of this. I'm Carrie Cariello. I'm a blogger and an author, a mom of 5, wife of 1. I say that because I'm all about seeking sister wife now, so I want to clarify that it's just 1 here. I also discovered this other show called Polyamorous. And when you actually see my watch list, you would think I'm really I'm unusual, but I'm just really fascinated by these shows.
I'm like, do you do dishes and stay up all night with my sleepless
I
kids?
love that.
I'm just wondering.
What is
I
your
love that
role
show.
here?
It's
I
Seeking
know.
Sister Wives. I've been watching that too. It is fascinating.
It's the hierarchy. I want to know more about the hierarchy. There's no way. I wouldn't consider, I'm 47. I've been married. It'll be 24 years this month.
Yeah, good job.
I'm pretty secure in my marriage, but I also don't want I don't want a 20-year-old barreling in here, like bouncing around. So that fascinates me. So I'm a wife to 1, mom of 5. And my second son, Jack, is diagnosed with autism. I almost said tested positive for COVID because that's where my mind is at, because we're having some COVID scares. He does not have COVID. He does definitely have autism though. And Jack is 18 and he did graduate high school in May, which was not a guarantee by any means. And he's now at a college type program a few hours from us.
Do you want to give a little bit of background on Jack? Maybe just a little bit about what led you to seek a diagnosis?
Sure. So Jack was diagnosed way back in 2005, which was really on the cusp, as I say, of this autism bubble that kind of, I think, exploded a little bit. And he was 18 months old. I always tell people Jack was born with an IEP in his hand. He was born with a diagnosis, simply the way our story is. I had a son just about a year older than him. I was able to say, wow, Joey was playing peekaboo by this point and Jack has no interest in us. It was really his level of detachment from our family unit that led us to seek services. That and something that wound up being not as significant later on in life, but as a baby, when it was time for him to start solid food, he could not manage solid food at all, could not get something from the front of his mouth to the back of his mouth. And I just remember saying that to the pediatrician and her saying, I think it's time for some early intervention. And that kind of got the ball rolling. Now, way back when, and I have no reference point, maybe it's the same now, we were living in Buffalo, New York, and we would call for these appointments and they'd say, we have something open in 6 months. And I was like, 6 months? This is going to be over with by then. We were so naive. We thought, gosh, we'll be just fine by then. It's not a lifelong diagnosis.
I think the waiting lists are even longer now.
I
don't think it's improved. I think it's gotten worse.
And they don't even tell you the time. They just say, we'll send you the paperwork. When we get it back, we'll get you scheduled as soon as we can.
That waiting period is really difficult. And so he was diagnosed. I can't say it was a huge surprise. By that point, we'd done our own legwork and homework at home, and he was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. So we since have moved to New Hampshire. We moved here when Jack was 3, and we're able to get him into an integrated preschool here pretty quickly. And it's been quite a journey, as I know all you moms understand.
It's so interesting to hear your story, Carrie, for us, because, some of us, because I have a 7-year-old. It's cool to watch the way that Jack communicates through text. It's amazing to hear him speak and how his language is different and yet the same via text. He's drilling you and needing all the things right away. But it's fascinating because I feel like for many of us, it's a look into the future. And I appreciate that so much. The light that you're shining on later on in the path for many of us, it's huge.
Thank you. You know, I've said before that when I was a young mom, like all of you are, I'm quite a bit older and further down. I always wanted that old mom. I mean, that's what I called this fictional person, an old mom. I hope nobody's calling me that, but it is true.
We have a couple of old moms here.
Now I think it's veteran moms is how we're referring.
I love that. I'm going to re-identify as a veteran mom.
Yeah. It's great for us who, like for me, my daughter, Nora, who's autistic, is 3.5. And then my son is 6, who is also autistic. And so seeing not only older boys, which I think Nixon and Jack are similar in the way that they view the world, but also older girls, which at this table there are, you know, Kim's daughter's 25, Jenn has an older daughter, you know, just learning from people who came before is so helpful. Really helpful. Thank God for the internet. Really.
Truly. I'm glad to hear that. It's a pleasure to share our story, but it really, when I see other people find themselves in it, that's very like rewarding. And I'm always deeply honored by that. And yeah, I always wanted that crystal ball, which unfortunately doesn't exist. And I wrote a little bit this week about maybe it's a good thing because we would focus so much on the outcome. This is an aside from autism, but I'm really trying to do some work personally and not getting so attached to outcomes. I talked about that on my live. I'm a person who figured out how the ending was going to look and then sort of worked my way towards that, whether positive or negative. I tell a story about how my husband and I were invited to a party a few weeks ago and his mother was really sick. And I thought, I know how this is going to go. He's going to go, maybe he'll have a couple of drinks. I'm going to wind up driving him home. This isn't the night I wanted. I don't know if I want to go to this party. And then I become so attached to that I almost in some ways maneuver the universe to make it happen. Instead, and this was really hard for me, it's hard work. I said, no, I have a really nice dress to wear. I want to dance with my husband. I like all the people at this party. I like to eat good food. And then I verbalized it to my husband. This is what I would like the night to be. And that's exactly what it turned out being. So I know we don't necessarily direct the future, but I do think mindset plays a huge role.
Yes.
And I was talking to a group of moms much younger saying, it's so easy, I hear this a lot, to get caught in the outcome control of he's never going to make it through camp. This school change is going to be terrible for all of us. A lot of anxiety around academics, right? And so you almost kind of draw your own pathway when you become so committed to that future.
The good is there. You'll see the hard stuff because that's what you've been keyed up for, you know?
Yeah.
Right. They say the human brain, it makes an immediate assumption, whether about people or circumstances. And then what it does is it seeks evidence to support that assumption. Right. So maybe you meet somebody for the first time in the grocery store and you think she's standoffish and a snot. Immediately you start to categorize or catalog all the ways that support your hypothesis. Her posture looks weird. She has a very expensive ring on. Her tone of voice is really condescending. And you build up your own thought process, your own echo chamber in a way.
I was listening to that live and I was like, wow, like this is so true because I have such a negative mindset sometimes. Just like, I just feel like I just see the worst case scenario first. And my husband's always like, why do you think of the worst? And it's just like with the way my brain works, because it's like, that's just what I see. And sometimes I can work my way up to the positive, but I always start with like the worst thing that could possibly happen. And it's so true. Cause then you're like, see, I knew this wasn't going to work. Or like when you were talking, I was like, oh my goodness,
she's talking to me.
Yes. I say it in my mind sometimes because it's so easy to be negative. You know, I feel like it's so easy to default onto that. And especially, you know, we live really hard lives sometimes, some of us. Sure. And it's like you're always just waiting for that shoe to drop. But there was a couple of other things that you were talking about too that coach was saying, and I'm like, this is a really smart lady.
And the phrase is neuroplastic. So your brain, it's really reaching in your brain and it is a muscle. It's like willpower is a muscle. All sorts of things just require doing it more and more often. And the other thing I'm trying to work on is how else can I look at this? I'll give you an example. I'm sure my brother won't listen to this podcast because he was driving me crazy leading up to my mother-in-law's services and just driving me crazy. So I had to take a minute and say, how else could I look at this? I could look at it as it's no big deal. I could look at it as he's coming from a good place. I could consider the angle that he's also anxious, trying to figure out how to support me. You may circle back to the exact same starting point. It's possible. I sort of did. However, I just force myself to take a minute and consider other angles. It doesn't mean I have to believe them or buy into them, but that alone is stretching your brain to do different kinds of work.
I think when we all had the opportunity to see you do a talk at the Mother's Brunch.
Oh, yes.
And I wrote down, this like struck me so hard as a mom early in this journey. You said autism is riddled with contradictions. And I think that plays into our mindset, right? Sometimes we expect our kids to be able to do the same thing they were able to do the day before. And the expectation is that they'll still be able to do that the next day, or that school is going to be this one thing and it goes completely haywire. But the idea that you just accept the fact that everything is not always going to be the same in your mindset can make a huge difference for your approach on expectations, or like where you're leading in your brain for the next day, or when something does go right, okay, well, maybe tomorrow will be better. Let's not go into this with a negative idea that everything's going to be terrible. And sometimes things are not great and you just have to like ride the wave, but also that it's ever flowing. And that's with anything, not just with autism. I mean, life is riddled with contradictions. Like sometimes you just feel like life should be going one way and you get hit with all these things that challenges, and your mindset really can get you through that, I think, especially for us who are new to this journey. So I loved that, by the way, as we were all weeping in the
crying. Table to the left.
Yeah, all of us.
It was the table of tears, I tell you.
It was a beautiful event. It was a beautiful event. I read somewhere that the brain is lousy at prediction. The human brain's not wired for it. The human brain bases behavior and choices on the day before. So it's a very habitual reactor, if you will. Like what felt good the day before is what we want to do today. And that's how habits get formed. And I do think, I spent so much of Jack's childhood seeing him only through the lens of autism, and missing the fact that my neurotypical thinkers, if I really even have one in this house, I'm not sure, but the people without the diagnosis also behaved very inconsistently, also could do a task one day that they simply couldn't or refused to do the next day. So that's been my next season here as he's off on his own journey to say, what is typical college kid behavior? What is autism behavior? What is an adolescent with a fairly still young brain and heart behavior? And kind of sifting through that. My husband got, so I'm sure we're getting ahead of ourselves because I haven't talked at all about Jack's program, but Jack's grandmother passed away and he decided he wanted to take the bus home. He was taking that bus home, and he ordered his ticket. He went online and did a round trip ticket, and it was like $34 one way, $43 the other. I'm paraphrasing, but the Uber to the bus station was $40. And so my husband was like, now he doesn't know, the cost of money. I'm like, but that's a typical college kid thing to do. Like, it's $40.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
An Uber, yeah.
In an Uber. And so never mind, like it was 6 blocks away. I don't know what happened with that. I have to look into that more, but we're still navigating that territory to see what Jack is choosing to do, what he's capable to do, and what is simply out of his reach right now.
One of my favorite examples of that you brought to your page, Carrie, was the umbrella that he purchased when I think he was like a week or two into school, and he had walked to the Walgreens.
2 days.
Okay. Yeah. And he had gotten there. He had checked his weather app. He's, like trying to adult and like take ownership of the things and what will I be facing this week and how can I navigate it? And then he got the gold-plated umbrella or whatever from the Walgreens. But I just cried when I read about it, because the thought that goes into it, the execution of realizing that tomorrow's going to rain, this is what I need, this is what I don't have. I mean, what a win. It's also like a $40 umbrella.
It's so true, but it's controlling what Jack can control. And that's what I have to remember.
Yeah.
So he felt out of control on a few fronts that day, I'm sure. And he thought, let me control what I can. And, we talked about a budget, just like we did with my oldest before college. And this is their money. This is all Jack's money. Yeah. So I'm sort of treading lightly. And he decided on $100 a week. To back up, we do have guardianship of Jack. And that was quite a process that was really difficult for us. There's a lot of this stuff I could be managing for him based on the guardianship paperwork, his medication. Truly, I'm pretty much in charge of that. And yet he's the one, he found the closest Walgreens. He changed the address in the health portal. He just texted me to let me know he messaged the doctor, because when he only has a couple of pills left, he has to give a heads up for this one medication he's on. So I'm trying to give him as long of a stretch as he can, and he's going to make mistakes.
Yeah, and they all do. All my kids do, So can you quickly summarize his high school experiences? I know that Jack was able to get a job, and I think that people are very interested in that. I loved hearing those stories.
Can you go back a little further though? Because he had some hard elementary years, didn't he?
Yeah,
middle, right?
Really hard. I would say anxiety in first grade was our first woke moment. I'm too old to say that. It was when our eyes were opened, things were not going so smoothly. First grade, tremendous crushing anxiety that led us to some medication. And so first grade was almost a washout for him, because he just really didn't take in much information at all. The rest of this elementary school year settled down, but sixth grade, that perfect storm of puberty, the changing social landscape we call sixth grade middle school here. I know it's different for everybody, but that changing social landscape, he really had no friends. We had some evaluations done that uncovered he was learning at maybe a second grade level, but this is in sixth grade. And I remember the evaluator, the doctor said, this is like everybody else around you speaking French, but you only speak 2 or 3 words. And he's frustrated. He knows everybody else speaks French and he doesn't. He's aggravated. He's overwhelmed. He's really out of sorts. And then you add in puberty on top of that. And his body was changing in hormones. And so we wound up getting an out of district referral in sixth grade, the end of sixth grade, which is pretty difficult to do. And he became a little aggressive. I say a little, but really he became aggressive. He bit a teacher. He kicked another teacher. He talked about knives. He talked about making it all go away. It was a really tender time in our family, because I remember Joe and I hiding the knives really up high and just trying to keep his spirit and his body safe. So we wound up getting this out of district referral. So for the remainder, 6th through senior year, he was in high school in a very small setting. There were 8 kids total in his program with 4 adults. And it was 8 kids. Yeah, it was really small. We toyed with the idea of bringing him back to our home district school, which was really large. And so it was sort of like Goldilocks. There was no perfect setting, but he was settled there. They understood him. And the important thing was he was learning. Yeah. So he came out with a modified high school degree. He didn't do any SATs or anything like that, but he did achieve a high school diploma. I think that in the end, he needed somewhere to go. We kind of liken it to cocooning. Like he felt so out of control in 6th grade emotionally. He needed to go somewhere small and safe, where he could regulate again, because research shows us when we're deregulated, we do not take in information. If our nervous system is elevated, I remind myself that all the time when my husband gets mad, that I think now's the time to really tell him how I feel. Yeah. And really change about the situation. Time and time
you
again.
Be careful. The sister wife might out you. He may forget, but she might remember. You be careful.
They're young. These young people, they get it. Yes. They're not old school. They haven't been through, 24 years of married fights, like next level. No, we're past dishes and stuff. That now we just want to break each other. Like, yeah. And a newbie, that's so different. So I agree. But even now, when people enter fight or flight, somebody explained it to me. I just loved this. Fight or flight leaves no room for empathy or compassion. Because in your brain, you're actually fighting off like a tiger. That's how elevated you are. You can't stop and feel sorry for the tiger. You can't think he's cute. You can't wonder if he's going to be okay at the end of the day. You have to be all systems go, push this tiger out. Jack still lives probably 70% in the tiger arena, in fight or flight all the time. His nervous system just runs at like an 11. And it's a reminder for me that we are what we call circle backers. So we circle back to whatever triggered everybody. And then we have the conversation after the conversation. And that's the only way change happens in our family. It took me, I've been married 24 years, 23 and a half to learn that. But I'm getting really good at it.
It's a new skill.
It's a new skill, shiny. So that was Jack's high school. We spent probably 8 months of his senior year desperately trying to find somewhere for him to go after senior year, because
he felt the expectation that he had watched his brother go. So like, that's what you do.
That's
right?
what you do. That's the trajectory you follow. Now, he could have, a lot of readers ask me, could he have stayed until 21 in high school? He certainly could have. I think we were faced with either moving him back to the homeschool, which is hundreds and hundreds of kids that he no longer knows, or keeping him in this very tiny environment. And Jack doesn't drive. We live in New Hampshire. A couple of readers had said to me, couldn't he go to community college, take 1 or 2 classes there? He could have. But I'm going to be really honest. I would have spent my days driving Jack back and forth, which wouldn't have worked for either of us. If he had stayed at the high school until 21, he would have had 2 other siblings graduate before him. And that would not have been good for him emotionally. He would have noticed that. He notices things, right? But I woke up one day, as is very likely for me, and thought, oh my God, on May 11th, every service Jack gets stops.
Yeah.
So this is a kid since he was 3, was in school pretty much year round. His high school was year round. He only got a week, 2 weeks, maybe in the beginning of the summer and maybe a few days at the end. And I was like, oh, that's me all over. You know, that could have been I could have really like cerebrally known that for months, but it takes me like a wake up moment where I'm like, oh my God, how did I miss that paperwork? What am I going to do with this kid? Because I don't know how your kiddos are, but Jack has a hard time finding purpose and meaning in the house without any structure. I can leave him alone. I could have probably left him alone by the time he moved for 4 hours, but he would have done nothing for those 4 hours,
right,
except text me or change the light bulbs or organize the Christmas ornaments, all good things, but not at 18 what I wanted for him. So we spent a lot of time researching programs, and I just kept coming up against wall after wall. And it was a really stark realization that there's not much out there for kids like Jack. And once you do identify, wow, this program's really going to work for him, it's a great fit, there's maybe 5 spots in it. And it was this balancing act of selling him, right? I became a salesperson. Like, he definitely has autism. He's got autism. No questions. Diagnosed. It is not that bad.
He's social, but he needs help. But he needs us.
Scaffolding. And yes, he has medicine. It's not that much medication. I mean, we all take medication. Like, it became this high wire act. And then, you know, for my oldest son, we had to submit. Well, he took care of it, but SAT scores or whatever thing. I'm submitting psych reports. I had to get him a psych evaluation. It was really eye-opening to the widening chasm between Jack and not Jack. And we identified it was 3 programs we came down to. Now, granted, we wanted him in a certain geographical sphere, and not maybe other people won't have that same requirement. We wanted to be able to get to him in a day if we could. Absolutely. And and although now he's taking the bus, like, what the heck? He could be anywhere. He's up on Greyhounds. And we had 2 rejections, and then this one where he really was our first choice to begin with. You know, but layered on top of that, and I haven't figured out a great way to blog about this yet. I'm working on it, but it's the financial component. It's incredibly expensive. So he's in a residential program that has pretty much full-time staff support. They're there from 7 a.m. to 11 at night. And he has access to life coaches and academic coaches and social coaching programs. It's $80,000 a year. And And that doesn't include he's going to audit 2 college classes come September. I call my husband Painless because he's a dentist and his license plate says Painless, or we call him the patriarch. Yeah. I have not brought up to Painless yet. So tuition.
You're like, honey, can you get the mail today? I just won't be home.
I'm not going to be, I hope in your COVID haze, you just, because
Yes. Slip it under
Honey,
the door.
I told you, don't you remember?
I told you that.
Yeah, wait till he's in fight or flight and his brain is mush, and then put it on his
Yes, and then
Put it
run.
on his desk and then run.
Oh, I don't want the conversation to turn into a referendum about what Joe and Carrie make or don't make as income. My husband works really hard. He's a dentist, and we can do it for now, but we can't do this forever. And really the bigger conversation is it's not accessible to many people.
Right. Yes. So there's nothing, you have to pay everything out of pocket. There's no help for you guys from any, from the state or anything like that.
Oh. So my oldest, if we couldn't make it for him, he's also in college. We could say, well, you can take out a student loan, or we'll file for financial aid. There's other avenues. Now, this one I'm working with, so we're in New Hampshire. I'm working with New Hampshire Vocational Rehabilitation to see if they'll contribute. They typically contribute towards tuition, but they don't contribute towards a living arrangement, which is really the bulk of Jack's expense.
Right.
My argument to them is, this is a kid you want to invest in. This is a kid who you don't want in 4 years when I can't provide, or when I'm gone and I can't provide. He will live off the state.
Yeah. And then hundreds of thousands that year.
Hundreds of thousands. My other kids, if we said to him, we don't have enough. We tried and we don't. They would figure out a way to get an education. And there's lots of other means for them. So it's kind of this maddening argument. And we're meeting again next week, and we're meeting with the Commissioner of Education. And I'm grateful to have all these people in front of me who are listening, but I don't know how to change the game.
Yeah,
I know. Because where we live, so I live in Massachusetts, and my daughter turned 22 4 years ago. She's 26 now. And so she goes to a day program. It's a day hab, and it's fine. I mean, it's a place that she can go and have the structure, and she's supervised and they do activities, but that's all it is. Do you know what I mean? There's no therapies. There's nothing helping her reach a potential of any sort. It's just kind of, and that's the only option. There's other options for maybe people in different areas of the spectrum that would be job vocation or, housing, but she's not in that population. She's in a very different population. And there's just, I was just flabbergasted. I couldn't even believe it, when we went through it. And some of the places I went to were, they were it was like a nursing home, but with younger people. Literally, that's what it felt like. It was very disheartening, and it's very shocking. There's so many people on the spectrum. There's so many children that have been diagnosed in the past 20 years. It's where are they all supposed to go?
That's really the thing. We all know so deeply that this is a lifelong condition, and to have so much support from the point of diagnosis or so much available support, maybe not accessible support, but it's available until a certain age, and then it drops off. But we all know that our children learn later, or it takes them a different pace. And so what my daughter's capable of at 20 might be what someone's capable of at 12, and she could have all this extra learning time, and she can't because there's no access.
My daughter started saying words at 22. She never spoke. 22, she started saying words. So it's she's not communicative as in a conversation, but she can say words. She couldn't even say sounds at 10 or 12. So it's her learning has exploded since she's been an adult, but there's nothing to help her along, which is just, and I know that's not the case for everybody, but it's so crazy to me. And a caseworker said to me, she goes, they're adults. You're adult a lot longer in your lifespan than you're a child. So the fact that there's not access to doctors that specialize for adults, children, yes, but not for adults, all these services that, Rachel was just saying, that are available to our children, and waiver programs that are available to our children, it's they turn adults, and it's I don't, and they just pick an age. My daughter's on an age. Yes, she's 26, but that means nothing. That's nothing to describe where she is cognitively, socially, anything, So it's they just pick this random age that means nothing if you're, for some, obviously, I know Jack is different, but, for her and a lot of others like her, it doesn't mean anything. So for them to pick this random age to like cut everything off, it's just,
Right.
I mean, I just think it's like gotten away with it for so long. So it's like,
Well, I've always said, there's always this resistance when they're younger, to even be able to like Rachel said, access the help, and everyone preaches early intervention. But it's like you said, Carrie, if we're not getting help with the services available to our children at this age, then they are just going to be a drain on the system. I mean, that is the reality of it at the end of the day. So it's a scary thought.
I feel like we all need a big, loud voice and stand shoulder to shoulder from coast to coast and talk about it, because my daughter's going to cost an awful lot at a place when we're gone every single day. I mean, that's what it is.
The very first piece I wrote, I said, I'm not saving for a college education for my daughter. I'm saving for a home for when I'm gone. I was like,
I know.
It's the truth.
Well, and Carrie, I have to tell you that every day I was watching to see what was happening with Jack in these programs, and every day I was just holding my breath. And I can't tell you how, and I know there's so many others were so happy when you guys found a place for him, because I just adore Jack. I smile every time I go on and see his messages. I mean, I don't know. He always can put a smile on my face. So, cause I can just so picture it. Like I can just so see him as you're writing, about the silverware drawer, like whatever it is. And he seems like a really great kid.
He can be. I mean, sometimes I'm worried I'm over posting, right, about his everyday, but people seem.
We just told everybody, actually, you don't over.
Yes.
Yep. You wait on Mondays for your lives. You don't. I just told the entire world.
Oh, okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Because it's real, everything. And we certainly had we've had a few stumbling blocks socially. He's working through some social. I said at one point, I knew he could do his laundry. I knew he could cook. All of that was like, check the box. Can he connect with people? He is a person who, if he feels slighted in any way, in any kind of injustice, he gets incredibly defensive, and that's it. It's almost like dead to me sort of person. Mm-hmm. And he's exhibited that a few times, but come back around and said, oh, I did talk to her. She's not so bad. But this is the benefit of having people right there who have seen everything. Like I emailed I've really not emailed a lot, but his team leader, and said, just to remind you, I know we talked about this, but this is sort of his temperament. Once burned, he will never be burned again, type of thing. And the breeziness with what she responded with, it was like, oh, it's completely developmentally accurate. We've seen it all. We've seen this dynamic over and over. Yes, they all police each other in the beginning. Yes, they do that. We had can't remember if I talked about it. I didn't write about it, but we had a moment, because Jack has a hard time with the they concept, right? So there's a few people in his program that identify as they, and they had a time where they called them all up to enter their emails into the computer. And I know exactly what happened. Jack, 6'5", bombed to be up there first, because that's consistent with Jack. And the person behind him said, hey, what happened to ladies first? And he got, oh my God, he was so upset with this person. And then it turns out she identifies as a they, which is fine. But then he's saying she's not even a lady. She's a they. So then this is like thread after thread of text to me. And I'm getting like just tired of it all. And he's saying, I talked to their roommate. She said they had a bad day. I'm still getting used to they. To me, they is still plural, right? So I write, okay, give her some grace. And he writes back, that's their name. And I said, enough, Jack. Like, I've had enough. He goes, no, their name is Grace. I wanted to like blow my head off.
Who's on first?
Yes, it's so good. It's like a sitcom. It's so confusing. So in normal Jack, like sitting here in New Hampshire, that would have been it. He would have perseverated if they even dared to talk to him about it again. And these people managed to help him repair. And now, are they best friends? No, but I think they can like coexist just fine. So I'm seeing him be able to rupture and repair, which is a tremendous movement forward for him.
That's awesome. So so what's his like day to day like in the program? I know you said he has access to life coaches, and is he mostly working on like life skills and stuff like that? What does he do in a normal day in the program?
So they just enrolled him in courses at a nearby college that he'll start in September. He'll start with 2. We were a little worried maybe summer would be too much time on his hands. They did start some classes. They're not academics. They're more about like how to have a healthy campus relationship, how to coexist, how to live safely in a city environment. So that takes up like 2 hours of his day. It's 44 students living here. And so they broke them up into teams. So they have a team meeting every day to talk about, are the chores getting done? You know, they're in a suite. He has his one roommate and then a suite mate who has a single. And then otherwise he has a lot. They do an activity, like an outing every day. Like they did an escape room. They might go to the farmer's market. If he sees optional next to it, it's an automatic no. So we're trying to encourage him that it doesn't have to say mandatory for you to go. I mean, this is a kid. I can't emphasize this enough.
Kind of a Jack.
You'll have to keep my feedback, like tell me, because I hope I'm expressing enough what he was like last year versus who he is now. Like this is a kid 3 years ago held my hand in the parking lot. And the other day he said, I'm at the mall. And I said, what mall? How did you get there?
Was it an accident?
Yeah, he took the bus. He's already figured out the bus system within this city, not only the Greyhound home, but the bus system within this city. And his grandmother passed, and she'd been sick for about 5 months. He knew, it was very emotional, that the last time he saw her would be likely the last time. So he was upset when we called, but I wasn't worried, like we're not there, you know. But I didn't think, oh, we'll just throw him on a bus. His grandmother just died, like get yourself home. Like we were fully prepared to go pick him up. And he was determined to see this piece of independence for himself. The other thing I thought was fascinating is when he texted us, he said, how long do I have to come home for?
So that's awesome.
It was amazing.
Wow.
And now,
Think about how different that was from like leaving for camp.
yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that program last year. And he has a week off at the end of August, and he's already saying, I don't think it's worth it for me to come home.
Oh, Carrie.
We had like a 3-day trip planned to Maine because it is very hard to get all 7 of us together. It's really rare now, and that was one of them. Everybody took off of work for these 2 nights in Maine. He starts actual college orientation, so the school that he's chosen, like midway through, he said, I don't think it's worth coming home. But I think he's also like, I spent my whole life waiting for those people, waiting for them to take me to Dairy Queen, waiting for them to take me to work. I don't have to wait anymore. I can get on a bus and be where I want to be. I think he couldn't even visualize it for himself. I mean, how could he? I know.
Well, I know you wrote a little bit about how like hard for you, like he's been your guy for 18 years and you've always taken care of him. And at one point you imagine taking care of him forever. So how does it feel? Like, is it hard for you on one hand to like not have him there all the time and not be responsible for everything in his life?
For sure, it's a big hole as a mother, because I spoke at some point about, I didn't want my life to revolve around him. It's never how I planned it. It simply was. When you have a diagnosed child, your life revolves a little more around them. And yeah, I was numb for a little bit. And then really with Joe's mother, that sort of took up a lot of space for us. And in a way, people who don't have kids like ours might have a hard time understanding this, but I was grateful sort of he was there and his needs were being met. And I could commit more wholly and fully to what was in front of me at the time. When he came home, he was only home 2 nights. And it wasn't the circumstances where it was like, hey, we're all together, let's do dinner. It was very somber. Then everybody got COVID. 15 of 30 people have COVID.
My goodness.
It was 15 of 30.
50% of the people.
I'm still standing. Look at me. I'm like, Harry. My husband's the youngest of 6. His family is 34. So not quite, I think it's 34. And so 15 of them have COVID. Oh, wow. And we didn't even poll like the 100, all the other people that that showed up at these services out of town and whatnot, like the cousins. And yeah, Jack, there's 20 kids in Joe's 20 cousins. So,
oh my gosh, the care package sent by his cousins.
I know his cousins are really special people. They've really shown up for him and just showed that they believe in him. And he's the only diagnosed kid. It's not as if they, you know, were familiar with this from any of the others.
Yeah.
So when he was home, he was again at a 12. You know, our house is a little like shh now. I always say I should wear a blood pressure cuff for when Jack walks in the room. This is not his fault. It simply is who he and I are. I always say, you know, he can only match the highest regulatory system in the room. And since his absence, I realized really I was matching his all the time. So I'm kind of like trying to discover the space that I live in right now. I do get, you know, he was a huge part of our evening routine, dinner. He helped plan dinner. So I'm trying to get accustomed to a quieter household. And then my oldest, who's making so much noise in the background right now that
I can't hear.
I need like a strobe light or something. You can't hear him? Okay, good. So he goes back the first week of September. So then I'll have only 3 kids at home.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
And it is really.
He's gonna send some over.
Yeah, I got some.
I would love a little kid right now.
Oh, she says that now. Well, Carrie, we would like to thank you so much for coming on and sharing Jack's story.
Amazing.
He's so inspirational to so many people. I don't even think you realize the impact that he has on so many other people. And we would maybe love to have you back sometime and talk about this mental health component. I mean, I think these strategies would be very helpful to so many of us.
Yeah.
Me included.
I would love that. I have like a whole list. It's simply a collection of what I've learned through my own therapeutic journeys and all the people I've come across. And you know, I have a notebook where I sort of put it all together because I thought these are the things that have been my guiding lights through my marriage and motherhood.
Carrie, I'm not sure how much you hear this. I know you hear that Jack is changing the world, and clearly he is. He darn sure is. But the way that you talk about being a Carrie outside of being a mom and working on your mental health, the tools that you share, it matters deeply. I just don't want that glazed over. We are all very serious about your writing and your sharing and how much impact you've made. Yes. And we want you to know we love all of you. If I could say your last name proper confidently, I would just say your whole troop.
Carrie Cariello.
In your book, What Colors Monday, you start, I think it's one of the first chapters, you're like, I can't marry you because then my name would be Carrie Cariello.
Here I am 24 years into it. Every day I spell
looking for another Carrie to share them with.
The sister wife would definitely have to be a Carrie. She has to struggle the way I have, I feel.
Carrie and Carrie.
With a K maybe.
C squared. C squared. That's what my kids call me, C squared. To let you know the level of respect that runs through our house.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. You can check Carrie out. Do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Sure. I am at carriecariello.com, and on Facebook I'm at What Color is Monday, and then Instagram, I'm pretty new to Instagram, can't get any traction there for whatever reason, but that is Carrie_Cariello. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Talk Like a Mother Parenting Autism podcast. If you are enjoying our podcast, make sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. And if you'd like to support us, you can become a subscriber. Just check out the description of this episode. Give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram for more content, and we'll see you next time.